His Only Case of Murder. A Locked Room Mystery by Malcolm Noble. Episode 2. We left the Riverside Lodge at 4 in the morning, but I didn't get away from the station until after 10. Aggie and Bub were questioned in different rooms before being locked in the cells. I tried to tell anyone who would listen that Bub shouldn't be charged, but I had less than 2 years in and was brushed aside. CID had their tails up. As I was walking through the front office, the desk sergeant grabbed my sleeve and said, "A message from Bub. Get his wife to tell you Aggie's secret." "Has he told the DI?" I asked. The sergeant shook his head. "He wants you to have a head start." "Look, I'm not clever enough to play games. Make sure the inspector gets the information." When I got back to the country police house, Hazel, Bub's wife, was nowhere to be seen, and the morning help was hoovering like Billy-O. "I'm not sure you should be doing that. The crime boys will want to go over the place." "Well, Miss Hazel will want it spick and span before they do. No, I don't know where she is. I had to let myself in with the key under the flower pot. I don't usually do Wednesdays, you know that." I went to the post office, stayed at the back of the queue until the shop was empty. Then the lady behind the counter said that she hadn't seen Hazel, but she'd heard that she had been with the landlady of the Red Lion all morning. "Are you sure it was Aggie's voice?" Hazel called as I trudged through the rough grass of the beer garden. She was sitting with a tall glass of gin and chain-smoking. A crumpled packet was on the ground, and her Bakelite ashtray had half a dozen subs in it. "There's no doubt, Hazel," I said, sitting down at the rickety cast-iron table. "I can prove Aggie didn't do it," she insisted, pulling hard on a new cigarette. "She was on the phone to the landlady here when the murder was done. They heard the commotion in the background." I told her that the phone call to the professor's study had been deliberate. It was supposed to draw attention away from the room and focus on Bub and Aggie. It worked well. "Surely the detectives looked in the room?" she asked, disbelieving. "Not for 40 minutes. It seemed odd that in the middle of our crisis other people were going about their daily business. Newspapers and vegetables arrived at the pub's back door. Tradesmen were being treated to cook breakfasts in the kitchen. Look, Bub wants you to tell me Aggie's secret." She thought for a second or two. "He must mean the army nonsense. God, it was years ago. Aggie's fiancé deserted in 49 and Bub shopped him to the Redcaps. I always said he could have waited until the day after the wedding. That's why she's so angry with him." "That doesn't seem much of a secret," I commented. "Hunt must know." "Well, there is the will, of course. The professor left everything to her, but he was worried that the family would challenge it, so they got married. It made no difference to them. She went on living as his housekeeper, and they had no married life to speak of. It was just to protect her inheritance." But still, I couldn't see how Hazel's story could be called a secret. There had to be something else. "What happened to her soldier?" I asked. "If he came back on the scene, it might complicate matters." A CID car arrived at the side of the pub. One detective was sitting on a headlamp, while his colleague spoke to the landlady in the kitchen. I knew we would be listening to Aggie's unbreakable alibi. "The lorry driver!" Hazel exclaimed. "He could have been the soldier. If he recognized Bub, he might have decided to get his own back. He'd get rid of the professor and cause trouble for Bub at the same time." "It's too much of a coincidence, Hazel. We need to work on proper evidence." "But it's worth a try," she insisted. "It could be a start. Listen, I've still got Bub's report. He hasn't submitted it yet. At least that would give us a name and address. Bub would want us to try." I was shaking my head. If that driver had anything to hide, he'd have given a false name and address. Then we'd have him as a suspect. I tapped my knuckle on the table. "We need something concrete." "Well, I want to know why you didn't search the room straight away." It was as if he was accusing me. The two detectives had left the kitchen and were ambling towards us, hands in pockets, ties askew, and collars twisted. Hazel, the killer had already murdered one man. I'm not a hero. Besides, I'm a probationer. I can't go trampling over a crime scene unless I'm told to. I tapped the table again. If only the professor had been able to leave us a definite clue. If only he'd scribbled something on his notepad at the last moment. Like the sign of 4, you mean? She said truculently. The policeman's wife knew she had made a mistake. As I tried to get the jigsaw fit, I said, Bub was never going to earn a fortune for you, was he? And you knew something about Aggie that would make her share hers. What was it, Hazel? She didn't answer. CID were 3 paces off when they stopped and took in my story. You were hiding in the room and heard me say a sign of 4 when I meant studying Scarlet. The phone was meant to distract everyone while you made your escape. The landlady would provide evidence that Aggie couldn't have done the murder, and Bub was with me all the time. So who did it? Well, we checked the lorry driver's details, and of course they would be false, because you've already changed them. He'd be the suspect. Aggie would be willing to back your idea, but we'd never find him. The murder would remain unsolved. You and Aggie would share the professor's money. As we walked across the forecourt to the patrol car, Bob explained, I worked it out pretty much as you did, Nipper, but it would have been hollow if I'd went around accusing people until we could be sure. I'm so sorry, Bob. Sorry for me? Don't be. A man feels differently about his wife when he learns that she wanted to kill him. You see, their plan would only work if she meant to dispose of me later on. She needed to be free to get the money. It sounded hard-hearted, but Bob was a man who'd always make the best of things. He wouldn't show others how it hurt. I asked about Aggie's secret. Hazel and I are the only ones who know that Aggie's marriage to the professor was worthless. She'd already married 20 years ago and hadn't divorced her husband. So the only way she was going to get the money was to go along with Hazel's plan and share the takings. Hazel was hiding in the big cupboard, I supposed. He nodded. CID have found the secret hatchway 3 days after the murder, but at least they found it. So Hazel gave herself away by quoting the wrong Sherlock Holmes mystery, just as you had done. That told me she was there to listen. If only I'd searched that cupboard when you'd left me in the room. Crikey, the DNI and I might have found 2 dead bodies and no murderer. Crikey, then we would certainly have needed your man Dixon Carr. He opened the car door. You're not coming with me, Nipper? I shook my head. The chief says I'm not safe to be out. He wants me to do a research project at headquarters. I start tomorrow. I think he's wise. You'll never make a good policeman. Why don't you try the movies? I laughed. He told me to keep in touch, then he got in the car and drove back to his village. Bub was right. My police career was short-lived, but I didn't go in the movies either. 3 months after the murder, I went to an auction and bought the professor's desk. I moved it, and me, into my girlfriend's house. One day I'd like to write a biography of the great man, and when I do, I'll do it at this desk. The last time I saw Bob, he was trying to teach road safety to some school lads who were intent on demonstrating parachute drops. One of the show-offs had seen a training film of soldiers jumping from the back of a truck. He had no chance of controlling them, but that makes no difference. He's still the best policeman I've ever met.